So, Monster Hunter Wilds just put out another new update, and they've actually pushed this update forward from Title Update 3 in order to try and sort of address the complaints that people have been having about the game lacking in endgame content. So now we've got this new endgame update that is just now released, with the main new features being 9-star quests so that we can have even harder monsters to fight, as well as a new endgame system where these new 9-star monsters will drop glowing stones, which can be appraised for randomized charms that we can now add to our build. And, well, just to give my quick thoughts on the update, I mean, I think it's a good update at this point. Wilds is so starved for endgame content that basically anything is welcome at this point. The 9-star monsters, I mean, I think that they have firmly addressed all of the people that, like, even the most hardcore players that were complaining about how easy the game is. I think that at this point, with the 9-star monsters, especially ones like Gormagala, I think the game is at a good level of difficulty at this point, so good on them for addressing that. And while I'm not a huge fan of randomized charms, again, at this point, I'm willing to take what I can get just because otherwise I have no real reason to really play the game anymore, so any new endgame content is appreciated. But I thought that I would also use this as an excuse or a jumping off point to kind of talk about the whole randomized charm versus randomized decoration system, and why I feel like not having normal craftable decorations is a big part of the reason why Wilds is lacking in endgame content. So just to bring everyone up to speed, in case you're not familiar with these endgame systems, the Monster Hunter series has kind of been alternating for the last few games between one of two systems for the endgame. Either the game has craftable decorations and randomized charms, or it'll have craftable charms and randomized decorations. So basically, decorations are gems that you can slot onto your armor and now your weapons in order to gain extra skills, in order to, you know, improve your build and build out your character. Each piece of armor will usually have multiple gem slots, and so you'll usually have over a dozen different gems just on a single armor set. Whereas charms are single units of your armor set that tend to have a lot more levels in a given skill than you normally get out of a single armor piece or decoration. Now, the way that this usually would work for most of the old games, as well as in Monster Hunter Rise, is you would be able to craft decorations individually, and that would work pretty much the same as it would for crafting any other kind of armor or weapon. Like, each decoration would have its own specific list of monster parts that it would require to make, and then you would have to go out, hunt those monsters, gather those parts, and then put all those together to craft that decoration. And then there would be a randomized charm system where every time you hunt a certain kind of monster, it would drop a number of charms that would not only have a lot of skills on them, but they would randomly determine how many of each skill, and then they would even usually have slots to put in more decorations on top of that. However, Monster Hunter World, and now Wilds, has sort of introduced a reverse to that system, where now charms are craftable, but usually you can only get a single skill on a charm, and you can't have slots on those charms. But you can do things like get the defense skill up to, if not max, at least nearly max, with just your charm alone, which is pretty substantial. And of course, you can pick what skill you want. But then the decorations you can no longer craft, and instead that's what monsters will be dropping in order to give you something to gather by hunting monsters over and over again. And then you're able to then slot those randomized decorations into your build. Now, a lot of people dislike both of these systems for a wide variety of reasons. For charms, for example, a big part of the problem is that because charms are singular items that you can't really modify, and yet they can have multiple levels of multiple skills and have slots to put in decorations on top of that, actually getting a charm with all of the skills and slots you want, or a god charm as most people call it, can be an extremely low chance, let alone if you have to do it for multiple different builds on your save file. So it can take hours and hours and hours of grinding just to get that one god charm that you want, and it feels like you're wasting pretty much all of that time up to that point, simply because since every build can only use one charm, once you got like a decent charm, until you get that god charm to replace it, every other charm may as well go into the garbage. So I can understand why that's annoying. But similarly, decoration farming is also annoying. Again, it depends heavily on the drop rates. I remember in Monster Hunter World, just getting a basic attack or critical eye gem was incredibly difficult for some reason, and there were people who would play the game for like hundreds of hours and only get like one attack gem, if that, which was just absurd. Now, in Monster Hunter Wilds, the drop rate for gems is substantially improved, in my opinion, at the very least for basic Tier 1 and Tier 2 gems. I've had like no problems getting all of the decorations that I want. But it can still be annoying to try and get that perfect tier 3 gem that you want that has the right combination of skills, just like with charms, because, you know, the drop rate of getting the actual gem that you're looking for can be pretty low. On top of that, I feel like another reason why random decorations are so annoying is because they are such a large part of your build. Any given build can have, like I said, dozens of decorations on them, and as a result, having to rely on random drop chances in order to get all of the decorations you want just makes it feel more annoying to actually construct builds, because you are so much more reliant on them. Whereas a decoration for, oh man, these charms are so interchangeable. Yeah, colloquially, a charm is a substantial part of your build, but it is still only one piece of your build. It's like equivalent to an armor piece, and because so much of the rest of your build gives you so many more skills across the other 5 armor pieces you have, as well as all of the slots they have for decorations, I personally feel like it's a lot less annoying to go without a god tier charm than it is to go without all of the decorations that I'm looking for, since I could need so many just for a single build, let alone if you have multiple builds across multiple weapons, and with the sheer amount of decorations that you might want, that could take even longer to try and grind out. Now, I know that multiple people probably already want to point out in the comments that Monster Hunter Wilds does have craftable decorations, technically, because you can always meld pretty much any decoration you want at the melding pot, at least for Tier 1 and Tier 2 decorations. And to that, I feel like that style of crafting is one of the reasons why Monster Hunter Wilds is lacking a good endgame, because traditional crafting actually allows you to do a lot more interesting things with a lot more knobs to tweak that can help add a little bit more variety to an average player's endgame grinding. The main difference between how melding works versus normal crafting is that melding allows you to throw basically whatever monster parts you want into a pot, and all that matters is that you get enough points in order to craft the decorations that you're looking for. So it doesn't matter if you just throw in a single Jin Dahad gem or 30, Tetsukabra or Chadakabra carapaces or whatever. As long as the point totals add up, then everything will work out. But as you can probably already tell by that example, part of the problem with that is that the only monsters that you're going to want to grind are the ones that give you the most high value materials. And if you're going to be doing that, well, then the monsters that give you the most high value materials are going to be the same group of most powerful endgame monsters that you're just going to have to fight over and over again. And that's kind of what makes Monster Hunter Wilds endgame feel like it lacks so much variety, because you have no real reason to hunt any monsters but the toughest monsters in the game. Like, nobody's hunting like Rompompopolo or whatever for the 40th time in order to craft something, when you can get way more value out of fighting monsters like Ray Dow or Jindahad or, you know, whatever. And so, as a result, that helps reduce the variety of monsters. Whereas with traditional crafting, where each decoration has a specific recipe that is required in order to craft it, that means the developers can go, you know what? This decoration requires Azeros parts, and so you're going to have to go fight that monster, even though you don't have to necessarily fight him normally in the end game. You know, they can take monsters that are weaker or lower tier monsters and make them still be valuable in the end game by making it so that certain decorations require them. And not to mention that some decorations also require you to fight 2 or even 3 different monsters in order to get all of the necessary parts in order to do that. So just crafting a single decoration could mean doing 3 completely different hunts in order to make it, and that's just making one decoration that might only give you 1 skill point in a skill that could have like 5 different skill levels to it. Whereas with the melding pot situation, because you could just keep farming whatever monster is the easiest for you to fight that gives you the most high value materials, you have no real incentive to actually add any variety to your hunts. Just if you're good at fighting Ray Dow and he gives you a good amount of parts, then just fight Ray Dow 100 times in a row and you can craft all of the decorations you could ever need. And I feel like that lack of variety is harming Monster Hunter Wilds' endgame. But on top of that, having those specific recipes also gives the player at least a little bit more agency over their endgame grind, because all we're really doing is just grinding out endgame monsters and hoping to get whatever random decorations or random charms drop from them. You know, there's not really any control that the player has over that. All they can do is just fight monsters and then just wait and see what the drop tables are at the end of the hunt. There's not really anything else to it beyond that. Like, I guess you can throw on a lucky voucher and that's about it. By comparison, when you have craftable decorations that have specific monster parts as requirements, those monster parts work just like any other monster, you know, system, like when you're crafting armor and whatnot. If you need Rathalos tails in order to craft a certain decoration, then you have to go fight a Rathalos and specifically try to cut off its tail. You know, things that actually play into the core mechanics of the game and incentivize you to not only hunt monsters, but also hunt monsters in specific ways in order to increase the chances of you getting the drops you want. Like, that not only helps you direct your grinding in certain ways, because like if you want this gem you have to fight specific monsters, but it also makes it so that while you're doing those hunts you actually have to go, okay, for this hunt I'm going to try and break its wings because I need the wings for this decoration, and then I'm going to try and cut off its tail because I need the tail for that decoration. It's not just about trying to reduce the monster's health to 0 as quickly as possible so you can get that end of hunt drop table. It's about actually hunting the monster and trying to play into the game's core mechanical systems. And the other thing is that because, especially with how the modern armor system works, you can have so many decorations on a single build, again, let alone if you have multiple builds across multiple different weapons, that there's no way in hell that you're going to be able to passively craft all the decorations that you want, especially when you have decorations like the Handicraft gem in Rise, which requires Magnum Malo orbs in order to craft that. Or the Attack Up gem, which I think requires plates and like 3 different monster materials or whatever. Like, you're not there's no way you're going to have all of the materials from just passively hunting your way through the story in order to craft all the decorations you want, which is why I kind of consider this an end game system in the first place. And so, because you can have like 24 different decorations on a single build, like that actually gives you a lot to work with and a lot to like grind for in the end game. So like, even though getting random charms can be annoying and really hard to get the exact charms you want, I think that the craftable decorations just give the players a lot more of a directed experience to grind for, that they have a lot more agency over. And on top of that, as I mentioned earlier, it dramatically increases the variety of monsters that you'll be fighting in the end game, since they can design the decorations to encourage you to fight as many different monsters as possible, to actually give you different things to do than just fighting the same 4 apexes over and over again. But as always, I'm happy to continue the conversation in the comments down below. Those are my reasons for why I like having the traditional craftable decoration systems like what we got in Monster Hunter Rise, as well as the more classic style games in the series. But feel free to let me know what you think of these systems down below. Like, do you prefer randomized charms and craftable decos, or vice versa? And by all means, feel free to let me know your reasons why, and I'll be happy to continue the conversation. But for now, thank you all for watching. If you liked the video, make sure to like and subscribe the video if you want to see more videos like this in the future. Thank you all for watching, and I hope to see you all in the next one.